Some stories just stick with you. For a reporter, they can become like a ghost, this question that just lingers for an entire career. Today, we're going to dive into one of those stories, a really powerful memory of a woman whose heroism went almost completely unnoticed, and the reporter who just refused to let her be forgotten. So, those are the words of the reporter himself, Frank Braun, right from his own manuscript. And that one sentence, wow, it just sets the stage for a story that would haunt him for decades. See, this isn't about fame or fortune. It's about a single act of love and a memory that just refused to fade away. So this really all boils down to two huge questions. One of them has an answer, but the other one, well, the other one is the very question that haunted this reporter for years and years. So let's start with what we actually know. To even begin to answer those questions, we have to go back, way back, to 1991. A family was just enjoying a night out, at a place that should have been safe. But it was about to become the scene of an absolutely unimaginable tragedy. Okay, so here are the hard facts of that night. It's a family event at a local bowling alley. A totally senseless argument breaks out. There's a flash of violence. And in that split second, Dilena Ocray made a choice. Without a single moment of hesitation, she used her own body to cover her youngest child. It was pure instinct, pure love, and it was her last act. Now, you'd think a story like this, a mother sacrificing her life to save her child, would be on every news channel, right? But the shocking reality was the exact opposite. When her story was pitched to local news outlets, the response was just a cold, uniform rejection. They said it was not newsworthy. This is where Dilena's best friend, Tyrone Barrett, steps into the picture. He wasn't just shocked, he was outraged. He could not accept that this unbelievable act of heroism was just going to be another statistic. So he went from TV station to radio station, trying to get anyone to tell his friend's story, but the door was slammed in his face every single time. And the reason they gave him? It was just too common. But Tyrone didn't give up. After facing rejection from literally everyone, he walked into the office of a minority-owned newspaper called The Wave. And it was there that he finally found someone who was willing to listen. Reporter Frank Braun, he knew this was more than just a friend's grief. It was a real lead, so he did the work. First, he just listened to Tyrone's furious, passionate plea. Then, he went and found an eyewitness who verified every single detail. And finally, he got confirmation from the lead detective on the case. Now this is a stunning contrast, isn't it? The media had just dismissed the story as another shooting, nothing new, but the hardened homicide detective, a guy who saw this kind of violence every single day, he said this one was different. He recognized a profound tragedy that everyone else had just looked right past. So, with this story confirmed and its importance backed up by law enforcement, Braun and his editor knew they had to publish it. But here's the thing. They didn't just report the facts of the crime. They reported on the media's failure to see why it mattered so much. And this story wasn't buried on some inside page. The Wave put Dilena Ocray's story right on the front, above the fold. That's the most important, most visible spot in any newspaper. It was a loud and clear and defiant statement. This story matters. The headline itself became the story. It wasn't just about the murder. It was a direct challenge to the entire news industry in the city. It forced the focus onto the very indifference that Tyrone Barrett had been fighting so hard against. And this approach was just so critical. The article immediately made the reader confront the central question. It didn't just tell you what happened, it demanded that you consider why you hadn't heard this story before. It was questioning the very definition of what we even call news. For the reporter, this story became so much more than just an article. It actually became a cornerstone of his entire philosophy, a whole new way of thinking about good, about evil, and about whose stories are truly worth telling. Braun came to see Dilena's final act as this perfect example of what he called absolute good. And it's a really powerful idea, right? The idea that some acts have this intrinsic, profound worth that doesn't need an audience. It's a kind of beauty and goodness that exists even if no one is there to see it or report on it. And this created a deep conflict in how Braun saw his own profession. On one side, you've got society's typical gaze, right? It's always focused on the rich, the famous, the triumphant. But he came to see his real duty as something else entirely, to shine a light in those darker corners, to find the heroism of the people our culture so often ignores. That was the only way to find those acts of absolute good. His reflection on all of this led him to a pretty profound conclusion. He believed that a mother's private, selfless sacrifice in a bowling alley was just as crucial to the human story as one of the most celebrated achievements in all of history. I mean, that's a radical statement about what truly has value. And so we end up right back where we began. The story was told, but for the reporter, a crucial piece was always, always missing. What happened to those two little boys, aged 4 and 7, who lost their mother that night? Growing up without that fierce, protective love, you just can't imagine how hard that must have been. And that unresolved question, that's the ghost of this story. It's a haunting reminder that behind every headline, there are lives that go on, forever changed.